as I was saying, food waste is a significant challenge faced by our restaurant industry. And today we are here to explore practical strategies and innovative solutions to tackle this issue head on. We have a lineup of great experts and speakers who will share their insight, their best practices, their success stories on food waste reduction. So whether you're a restaurant owner, a chef, a manager, or simply just passionate about sustainability, this webinar will offer valuable knowledge and actionable tips that help you implement your own operation. So just a little bit about myself. My name is Hibartel again. I am the Education and Outreach Specialist for the Santa Clara County Food Recovery Program. The program is charged with county-wide implementation of SB 1383 food recovery requirement. And so we are responsible for identifying, providing education, outreach to all the regulated entities, as well as collecting, reporting, monitoring compliance, and including conducting inspections. Before I continue, I would also love to introduce Kira Lowe. She is the program manager of the Santa Clara County Food Recovery Program. You'll be hearing from Kira a little later in the presentation. So for now, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you in the chat and the Q&A. So a couple of housekeeping notes. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions you may have during the webinar. We will answer them at the end of this session. We will also be giving tips on reducing food waste, and we would love to hear from you as well. Share with us your prevention practices at your business. We have compiled many resources from industry groups and businesses across the country, and we will share the best practices with you today. That being said, you are the experts, so please chime in with your own food waste prevention strategies. We would love to hear from you in the chat. And then your questions can be placed in the Q&A box, and then we will happily try to answer them all today. Finally, we would love for you to hang around at the end of this webinar and fill out a quick survey to get your feedback. So please don't leave before answering that survey for us. The webinar today will provide information about the new state law that has passed due to the enormous amount of food waste that is ending up in our landfills. So SB 1383, it's a Senate bill, and it's a California law that aims at reducing the amount of organic waste in landfills. SB 1383 also aims at reducing the short-lived climate pollutants. We also will provide resources and best example about prevention, case studies, like I mentioned earlier, from some speakers that were graciously generous enough to give us some time and tell us about their prevention strategies at their work. SB 1383 requires regulated restaurants to recover surplus food, but we wanted first to start with prevention, and then Kira will discuss SB 1383 requirements on how to set up your food donation program if you end up having surplus, as well as the requirements for your business under the law. We are aware that you most probably know most of these strategies that we were discussing today, but we hope that you pick up one or two new strategies today and also share with us some that we might not have mentioned so we can share it with others. I'm sure you've heard the statistics that around 40% of our food in the US is wasted. And as you can see here from the graph, that the consumer-facing businesses make up 40% of the food wasted. And that is a whopping $25.1 billion that restaurants in the US spend on food that gets thrown away. So therefore, prevention is the best practice. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, the most preferred pathway is to prevent food waste, and the least preferred one is obviously sending them to the landfill. So reducing surplus food and eliminating it is the best way to minimize your environmental impact, such as water impact. You will preserving your water, the fuel, as well as resources that are used to produce and transport that food. So prevention should be all of our first priority, and but also it is the best solution business-wise. According to an analysis done by the World Resource Institute and the Waste and Resource Action Program, they have stated that for every dollar invested in food waste reduction, restaurants on average realize an $8 of cost saving. So, it is a win-win for environmental impact and as well as for your business or the bottom line, the cost saving for your restaurant. So where does waste happen in restaurants? So pre-consumer waste is about 4 to 10% of your food purchased. And when we're talking about pre-consumer food waste, it's basically factors the overbuying, overproducing, trim waste mishandling, failing to repurpose the food scrap, or intensive menus choices that hinders you from managing your inventory. Also, research shows all-you-can-eat buffet tend to have more waste than made-to-order restaurants, and also frequent staff turnover can contribute to more waste. Post-consumer waste includes food that is disregarded after reaching the customer, and obviously this food cannot be donated or repurposed. It has to be discarded. So, and it makes up the majority of the food lost in restaurant, and that's around 30 to 40% of food served. And the factors contributing to that is either large portions, which the consumer never finishes, or leftovers that were not taken home by the customer. As this slide shown, we wanted to take kind of a few moments to show you within your operation, the strategies at every step that you can take to reduce your food surplus. Something like production planning or whether it's waste tracking. And I'm going to go into details with examples about each one of these. But we wanted to highlight that by cutting down on your food waste, restaurants can improve the ingredient yield and overall increase your profitability. ReFed, which is a national nonprofit working on highlighting food waste solution across the food chain, has compiled a lot of research, and the research has shown that the most feasible practice to reduce your food waste is menu redesign, portion control, and optimization of quantity. However, the biggest profit is the waste tracking, which was highlighted in bold here, as well as inventory management and production planning. So to go into details about each one of these, we wanted to provide some best practices, and then in terms of planning, production planning such as demand forecasting or menu engineering ensures that the proper ingredients are available at the time of when each item is being prepared. So for example, consider designing menus that allows you the flexibility to use ingredients in multiple dishes, or offer seasonal specials, and consider portion sizes to minimize your leftover. Maximize the opportunity to use the same ingredients in multiple dishes. So this way, if one dish is not ordered all the time, you can use the same ingredients and create another dish, and this way you don't end up with that surplus. Plan your menu item that can share ingredients and offer daily specials. Let's say you have a surplus of one ingredient, then you can create daily special to move that surplus so it doesn't end up becoming a wasted ingredient. Using demand forecasting software and maintaining detailed internal records to track your sale trend or seasonal variation, and then also special events. This helps you, and this doesn't need to be a technological tool. It can be, and you can hear from our speakers later on, it can be just a record or a sheet that is communicated and circulated in your restaurant. Inventory is optimization, as I mentioned earlier, is something that is the most profitable. It ensures that the restaurant has enough stock on hand to meet demand without overstocking. We've heard methods such as FIFO, which is first in, first out, or conducting regular stock audit has shown to reduce spoilage at restaurants and cut down on food waste. Other practices such as ordering the right amount based on that demand reduces your excess inventory, ordering fresh food more regularly, purchasing less and reducing your stock levels also will help minimize and ensure that you use your ingredients before they expire. So either whether you're ordering more regularly or purchasing less or ordering the right amount, increasing that communication with your supplier is key here. So your supplier is aware and educated about the efforts that you are conducting at your restaurant. The other sector that we wanted to discuss, which is basically the back of house or where you handle all of your ingredients. So some tips, one of the tips was tracking the waste and keeping records. And this way is by monitoring your food waste regularly and keeping a detailed record. Restaurants can identify, the pattern as well as reasons why you're wasting. And I will elaborate a little bit more on that as it's a very effective tool. But then other tools or other strategies are proper training of all your culinary team that can lead to more effective food preparation, as well as portion control and giving them some creativity to use ingredients that ultimately or otherwise you would have thrown away. Utilizing vegetable peel or trimming or other food scraps that create stock or soup or garnish that also adds to the dish that otherwise also you would have thrown away. Finishing saucing or dressing or other components on the dish before serving ensures that you also maintain the freshness and the quality of your plate, but it also allows you the flexibility to accommodate some of the customer's preference, maybe dietary restrictions, as well as repurposing some of these ingredients that you have not finished and sauced. So instead of throwing that away, you can repurpose it the next day in another dish. And then we also wanted to mention another very important strategy that was mentioned all along our research was making sure that all the food items are properly stored in a proper container and optimum temperature, and labeling all your perishables with whether the date that they were received, the date that they should be considered expired, the amount of serving in each container. In some kitchens also, they have color-coded labels, and this makes it easier for the back of house staff to know which category of item is in which container, as well as which one to move, as we have mentioned in the FIFO strategy, where like first in, first out, what is about to expire. So getting your ingredients moving, so nothing is spoiled and nothing is thrown away. So as I mentioned earlier, so tracking is something that we wanted to stress upon a little bit, and there's a sentence that I saw in some of my research, which I wanted to highlight, and it's kind of struck me a little bit, is what you cannot manage what you cannot measure. So, and therefore, this is why tracking is very important. It helps you establish a baseline and gives you an essential tool to measure your progress. So observing the trend of what, seasonal variation, what is popular, what is not, identifying where is the problem, whether it's a preparation, what is proportion, was it inventory, and also increases your employees' awareness. So your employee knows what is being thrown away. It also generates a conversation and kind of an understanding of what's happening at the restaurant level in terms of the waste. What to measure, obviously you can go as detailed as you want. You can add more to what you want to measure in terms of your food waste log. But we thought, and from my research, what to measure, the basic ones are food waste, what is the weight and the volume. So tracking the weight and the volume of the waste gives you a tangible metric of what you are, of what the scale of the issue. Categorizing the waste by stream, so whether it's spoiled food, it's prepared food, so it helps you pinpoint areas for improvement. Measuring the waste by origin, so understanding whether it's coming from the kitchen or it's coming from the customer, and then the destination of where the food is ending up. Is it ending up in a compost, in a landfill? And finally, you would want to know the value of the food that you are throwing away, so the financial impact. And this helps motivate you and the staff, to better understand, because there is a dollar value to what you're throwing away. So in the last segment that I wanted to cover is the serving. So basically front of house, and kind of also back of house. So basically, because the food is being prepared, so it is crucial to establish an open communication between back and front of house staff regarding customer feedback, whether waste. This allows a better coordination between the staff, and also adjustment of food preparation, whether there is something that a customer is always not liking, or whether, so this is visible by front of house, so they can tell, the kitchen staff what is happening. Also providing multiple portion size can help reduce waste. This allows customers to choose the amount of food that suits their appetite. This also leads to increased customer satisfaction, because they know what they're getting. They're ordering what their appetite is at that time. In a buffet setting, consider implementing trayless dining and serving food in a smaller and shallow dishes. This encourages customers also to take only what they eat. This way, you also are reducing the food that is left uneaten on the buffet. Consider providing bread and garnishes and condiments upon request. Again, it ensures that they are only requested because they are needed, and this way you don't have to throw away all that bread and garnish that ends up on the table. Share your surplus with staff. So we've heard this multiple occasions through my outreach with multiple restaurants and hotels. So instead of letting that surplus food go to waste, consider sharing it with your staff. This can create a way to reduce your waste, but also it fosters a sense of community within the team. And finally, sell your surplus food at a discount. Another option is to, to sell it at a discounted rate. This also not only reduces your waste, but also gives you an opportunity to generate revenue. Too Good To Go is a good option. It's an app, and our guest will discuss this tool shortly. Speaking of guests, I wanted to introduce our first guest today. His name is Rue Pastor. He is the general manager of the Ameswell Hotel. Rue was gracious enough to offer some time and give us really innovative and great examples of how they, at the restaurant themselves, reduce their waste and come up with ideas to use their surplus. So I'm gonna let Rue explain all of that to you. Here's Rue.
Good morning. My name is Rue Pastor. I'm the general manager at the Ameswell Hotel here in Mountain View. And we're excited to share some of the efforts we've made in some of our different departments to cut back on food waste and help those around us. So to jump in, I'm going to talk a little bit today about a few different areas. We're going to start in restaurant, Roger Restaurant Bar and Grill. And here we really focus on really reusing the extra portions. For example, anytime you're having steak or other ingredients, you're going to have some trimmings. And so, for example, our Wagyu trimmings, we like to reuse those to make sliders or dumpling fillings, etc. So we try and take what we normally would trim off, what isn't going out from the plate to our guests at the restaurant, and reuse those into different exciting ways. We often do a lot of making sauces with aromatics. Once we've done that, we like to turn those into powders to actually season the steaks with the bar chips. So we do that by straining after we've used everything, strain it, then we dehydrate it, and then we blitz that into a powder. And so we do that quite a bit in our restaurant. And what that allows us to do is essentially take what was a part of the original entree, and now we've reused it, dehydrated it, blitzed it. Now we've created a kind of seasoning powder. And then we get to reuse that on the steaks or on the chips, which is something that we're serving to our guests, and we actually took the extra ingredients from. So it's definitely full circle. This is where you cue your Lion King soundtrack. It's a full circle of life, which we're pretty excited about. The coffee grounds that we use mostly from the cafe and also the restaurant, we also like to turn those into both the soy sauce, which would be aged, and then we use the liquid from that, or a shoyu, which is a byproduct of the soy sauce. So The coffee grounds, in one example, the coffee grounds get used, and then we essentially press it and age it, and we take the liquid and we use that for the shoyu or the soy sauce. We also will mix that with koju and koji, and we cook that for about 6 to 8 weeks. Then it turns into a coffee shoyu, which we use on our specials. And so as we're reusing these ingredients, that's actually being employed by the chefs as they start to think about what is a special we want to run tonight, what's a special we want to run next week, as we get those ingredients. So sometimes the leftovers that we have actually influence some of the dishes that we're going to serve. And so we have kind of our seasonal menu, but then we'll have specials that we run on any given night. And that's going to be based on some of these things that we have extras of. We have one idea that we're thinking of. We haven't actually gotten to employ this yet. And that is a third thing to do with that, the coffee ground, because ultimately there still is some coffee ground waste, even after we've made the coffee, but even after we've aged it and pressed it and used it for some of the sauces, we still have the actual coffee ground. So one of the things that we're considering now is how can we use that kind of in a chef herb garden. The challenge is there's an acidity to the coffee grounds, which we have to be very careful. So if we can figure out some plants or herbs that benefit from that, that's kind of our next step. But I don't want to pretend there is a zero coffee ground waste. There is still a little bit, and we're trying to find a way to maximize that. We also have leftover tea leaves, and we like to use those both in a tiramisu and herb bee salad. I would say for our restaurant, kind of our main keys to success had to do with dehydrating and making seasonal powders and repurposing ingredients. Those are probably the two things I would take away from our restaurant efforts. We all like to talk about cocktails and drinks, and so in our bar, we do some really fun stuff. We take the bacon fat that we've used in our restaurant for other ingredients, and we will fat wash our bourbon whiskey, and that is done to impart flavor. And so that's done by, you have to kind of essentially re-liquefy the fat by heating it up, pour it into a bottle, we shake it, it's cooled overnight, and then you skim the fat off the top. But what that has done is it's infused that beverage, in this case, the whiskey, with that fat and smoky flavor that you had from the original bacon fat. Cucumbers. This is an example we had not too long ago. We ended up with way too many cucumbers. There was a mix-up in purchasing, which happens from time to time. So we had a few extra cases of cucumbers. So we jumped into action and we made a Madras cocktail. So the bartenders were essentially blending the cucumbers, and then we added tequila, mezcal, and syrup to make a new cocktail and not have waste. And of course, we ran that as a cocktail special for a few days. It happened again just before the holidays. We somehow ended up with a few too many gallons of cider. And so we also decided to turn that into a cocktail we called the Gold Rush after the 49ers. We added tequila, mint syrup to that cider and made another special. So that worked really well for us. Again, we dehydrate citrus. We're dehydrating a lot from our hotel. We dehydrate our citrus to make the garnish for the drinks, and also to dehydrate, strain, and use them as bitters. So there's a few different ways to kind of reuse ingredients for the cocktails. There's also something that we're experimenting with here again. We haven't quite had a chance to see it come to fruition. We want to infuse the cocktails with liquid from making the candy pepitas, which are pumpkin seeds. So we already make these pepitas, these candied pumpkin seeds for other dishes. And what we'd like to do is reuse that liquid, which we already made the liquid in-house, but now it's not being reused. We want to find a way to take that liquid and use it in a cocktail. So we haven't come up with the right drink yet, but we are absolutely working. Next, we're going to step over to our cafe. This is where we utilize, or used to utilize, an amazing program called Too Good to Go. The point of this program, it's a website you can go onto, you can sign up for. It allows you to take leftover foods and essentially sell them, obviously at a discounted price, and folks will come in, get those from you like a to-go order, and then the restaurant, hotel doesn't have to waste, and guests get something at a discount. So we just used that program for pastries. And part of that was because we were finding it difficult to control the volumes of our pastries because we were using outside vendor for many of our pastries, most especially croissants, which are so challenging to make. So we were ordering, and we had to order in certain batches from Manresa, and so we couldn't sell them to them. And so we used Too Good to Go. We always had kind of limited quantities that we were selling. And you can go on each day, you list what you have to sell and what the price is, and that's it. It's as simple as that. In this particular case, it was always successful. We always were able to sell whatever pastries that we were listing for sale. So that was an outstanding program. So it really worked wonders for us. Now, as we started the transition, we started to make more of the pastries in-house. This was certainly driven by a cost basis for us. It's just so expensive to buy these things from the outside. So as we were able to make more in-house, we were able to control more of the cost in the product that we were ordering. And so that helped us save waste as well. Now, kind of the final nail in the coffin, unfortunately, for this program for us, was that we started taking the leftover pastries and we used them for French toast on the weekends. I highly recommend taking old pastries for French toast. It's amazing. But after that, we didn't really have any leftovers per se. So we haven't been using the program in a few months, but while we were using it, it's really tremendous. And that brings us really to kind of what about food that is still left over? And this is when we take advantage of our cafeteria. We have something called family meals. Normally, these are meals that we prepare these things specifically for our staff. However, when we do have leftover ingredients, be it from the cafe, be it from the restaurant, or even from the banquets, which I'll talk about in a minute, these we take right in and we share with our employees. So we may have a family meal scheduled, but there may be some additional dishes that come out because of some leftover that we don't want to see wasted. And with the new regulations, you can't just take any old food that's been out and donate it. So we reuse that, and that really finishes off most of the last leftovers.
All right. So thank you so much, Ru. This was fascinating. I hope you all got the chance to pick up some innovative ideas. So before I introduce my next speaker, I wanted to cover something that is also, again, has been mentioned multiple times during my TA calls, my technical assistant call with a lot of restaurants and other businesses, as well as something in the research, which is like any business, getting your team on board is crucial for the success of any business, right? So communication is key. Regular check-in provides your team with the opportunity to ask questions or provide updates or even suggest something that is, didn't cross your mind as a manager or an owner. It also helps identify any additional training that might be needed or refreshment on a procedure that your staff is missing. This can be done in your team meetings, whether morning huddles. So it's something to consider. And then your team is also the best in the best position, to know what food is being wasted, what systems can be efficient, and they can also identify, problems such in packaging and storing, and also help you set up a donation program to recover that food. So use their knowledge at your advantage. And the best practices to do that is to engage them and promote their support and highlight the benefit of whether you are preventing surplus or whether you're donating your surplus. Making sure that it's safe to talk about food waste instead of shaming your staff about food waste. Schedule regular check-in. Maybe also designate a food warrior or a food champion, food waste champion in your business, someone who is prone to, into sustainability and knowledgeable about this. And track your progress, celebrate that success regularly. These are all aspects of communication that can help you, again, have a successful program, whether it's donating or whether it's preventing surplus. In addition to team communication, consider communicating also with your customer to boost your reputation. According to research, 72% of US diners care about how restaurants are handling food waste. So whether you're using a poster or a table tent or a signage to educate your customer on your benefit of reducing food waste, or having a coloring page for kiddos and your younger customers with a message about sustainability, incorporating a message on your menu or your bill or on your to-go containers, just simply reminding your customers about your conservation effort or your prevention methods. Utilizing social media. We know we're all on social media now, so maybe share your food waste reduction efforts on social media platform and encourage your customers to spread awareness, and maybe you will be attracting like-minded customers to that business. So having that customer engaged as well as your staff in communication is key. And I left a couple of kind of slides or pictures there to help you get an idea and maybe trigger some examples. Now we're going to our next case study, Lumi Gardner. Lumi, I've met also through a technical assistant call. She manages Fuki Sushi restaurant, and she is very passionate about sustainability. She's been a manager over 3 decades, so she's done this over a while, and she had really great examples on managing a restaurant while thinking about sustainability. So I'm going to leave you with Lumi so she can give you more details about that.
Hi, my name is Lumi Gardner. I'm at Fuki Sushi restaurant in Palo Alto. Fuki's been open since 1978, so we've been in business for 46 years. I myself have been here for 33 years. Fuki is interesting. We have 5 kitchens inside. So that allows us to have a very large menu, but it also takes a lot of balancing in order to ensure that each independent kitchen doesn't create waste. And I found through my years that communication and change are the 2 key elements in ensuring that we prevent waste. I broke it down into 3 kind of subcategories. So we have back of house, front of house, and our staff. For back of house, there are 4 key points. We have FIFO, checklists, countdowns, and staff meals. So FIFO, everybody knows first in, first out, kind of basic, where we maintain inventory and freshness by ensuring that the first in is the first out. We keep our inventory low, just like at home. Before you go to the grocery store, I check my fridge, I check my pantry, I make sure what I need, what I don't need. In the restaurant, it's the same thing, but you have a lot of other staff taking and inputting. So we have to make sure that everybody's communicating with one another. We have checklists, so items are not over ordered, and they're on a weekly basis. So Chef A can see what Chef B ordered 2 days ago, and so everybody has that in front of them. We have the countdowns. In our menu in the computer, we can input this item. We're only going to have 10 of today. And that allows the chefs not to over prep, which is very helpful for them to be able to manage their inventory, and we eliminate waste that way. The servers know that as well, and it's visible for the whole team. And then finally, we have staff meals. So staff meals is nice. It's something that we do for our team. There are items in the Japanese cuisine and culture that aren't necessarily popular with Western palate, like kabuto is snapper head, sakekawa salmon skin, harami is like the fatty part of the salmon with the fin, The chef marinates that in maybe miso or sake paste, and we all love it. But that way we don't even waste any part of the fish. So we do that for our staff meals, and we just all sit together and eat lunch. The second subcategory I have is front of house. So front of house, we do a lot of things like menu updates, for example. We go through the menu on a yearly basis and assess with the chefs, with the servers, a lot of open communication on what items are selling, not selling, and also what the guests are really enjoying or not really eating as much of, or not finishing, up to that level of detail, to eliminate waste of even what guests may have ordered and paid for, but maybe didn't finish all the way. We have flexibility in our menu. So when in the menu, we have overlapping items. An example would be like the tuna. Tuna, whole fish comes in. Certain parts can be used for sashimi, nigiri. Other parts we have to scrape on the fiber and we can make tuna rolls. But not everybody's going to order a tuna roll. We don't want that to go to waste. So we have spicy tuna, we have deep fried tuna, we have tuna tartare. So having that kind of overlap of an ingredient allows us to ensure that that ingredient does not go to waste. We actually sell out of it. We have a today's special paper. This is great. This paper circulates through each of the kitchens, and the chef then puts what they have a countdown of, what we don't have available, what they want to sell out of that day. And that all gets communicated to the servers in the front of the house. So that can then get passed on to the guest. And that allows us to move inventory efficiently. And we don't want to focus on trying to sell something that we don't really have very much of, or we don't have of. We have pre-order. So a lot of times we'll have large groups come in. And instead of having the chef be concerned with the entire menu of what this 40-person guest group might order, we have a preset menu, and that allows all 5 kitchens to be prepped and ready for this 40 guests, and to eliminate any over prepping potential. And then finally, we have multiple outlets. So multiple outlets means that it's not just dining. We have catering, we have takeout pickup, we have the delivery service, we have online ordering. So having all these multiple outlets allows us to move our inventory. It may be a really stormy, rainy day and dine-in is very quiet, but takeout is very busy. So allowing that multiple outlet to move the inventory is very efficient. So lastly, there's the component of our staff. So staff, we have training and we have self-assessment. For the training, we've really tried to train our domestic new hires in the way that our chefs from Japan have been trained. So in Japan, they train not just how to make this dish, but it's how to yield this fish in the maximum yield so that we don't waste anything. Wasting, being wasteful is like being sloppy, and that's the worst quality to have. So training them, the new hires, on how to ensure that they don't waste anything is something that is very important to us. It's pretty interesting because, like, even when the salmon comes in, whole salmon comes in, they fillet the salmon, they take the salmon skin, grilled salmon skin. They take the fin, the fatty part, use that for in filet meal. They scrape the bones, okay, to get the salmon meat off those bones, and they make small little appetizers from that. So the chefs really yield every possible part of this fish, so they don't have any waste. So we teach that all about in training. There's also self-assessment. So there are times where something might spoil. Okay, we self-assess and we try to determine, how did that happen? Was there a break in communication between the chefs and the servers? Was something misordered? Was there an error on the distributor's end? And so we can ensure that that kind of error does not happen again. So those are the basics of how my restaurant tries to ensure that we don't have any waste. I understand every restaurant is so different. I do hope that you can take away some of the points that I brought up and implement them into your business, so we can ensure that we minimize the waste wherever we can. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, Lumi. That was a great presentation. Thank you both, Lumi and Rue, for sharing your expertise and insights as veterans in the industry, and leaders, clearly leaders in sustainable practices. We really appreciate it. So in this last segment of the webinar, I'm Kira Lowe again. Have introduced me briefly at the start. I'm going to focus on compliance with SB 1383 edible food recovery requirements and go over how to set up a food recovery or donation program if you do have surplus food that would otherwise go to waste. So briefly, an overview of SB 1383, also known as California's short-lived climate pollutant reduction strategy. SB 1383 aims to reduce statewide greenhouse gas emissions, primarily methane, by reducing the amount of organic waste that ends up in California's landfills. So the law sets the following goals statewide. The first two aimed at reducing organic material in the landfill by 50% in 2020 and by 75% in 2025. And then the third goal covers food recovery, so aiming to ensure that 20% of food that currently is disposed of in the landfill is instead recovered for people to eat. Hebe, you can go to the next slide, please. So what does this mean for restaurants? If your restaurant has over 250 seats or is greater than 5,000 square feet, you're required to comply with the following two requirements under state law and local ordinances in Santa Clara County. So the first is submitting a food recovery report annually. This starts in 2025 and covers the previous calendar year, so the 2024 calendar year. And then second is to donate surplus food that you would otherwise throw away to a food recovery organization, and then to keep records of that food recovery program. So one thing to note is that there is no minimum donation requirement under the law, and you're not required to donate food unless you have surplus food that would otherwise go to waste. So as we mentioned before, if you only have small amounts of surplus food, we really recommend giving that surplus to employees or selling it at a discount. That said, if you do end up with surplus edible food that would otherwise go to waste, you are required under law to recover and donate that food, of course, always adhering to Cal Code. If your restaurant meets the above criteria and you are in Santa Clara County, then you should have received letters and possibly emails from us as well. If you haven't received any emails, you've just received letters, please reach out to us and provide your email address. We do send a lot of communications via email regarding reporting and reporting reminders. We send some in the mail, but it's great to have an email address on file as well. I'll put our email in the chat at the end of the presentation so that you can get in touch with us. If your restaurant does not meet this criteria and you've been receiving communications from us, then you should also email us so that we can remove your restaurant from our list of regulated entities. Okay, next slide. So now how to go about setting up a food recovery program. First, you need to find a food recovery organization that can accept the types and amounts of surplus food that you have to donate. So we have a matching tool on our website that helps you to find organizations that are a good match, and I'll review that in a moment. Packaging donations in shallow sanitary containers is important. Once you have a food recovery partner established, then you should work with them to find the size and method that works for you both. We do recommend using reusable containers where possible. This is obviously better for the environment and can also cut down on costs for you. You can designate freezer and or refrigerator space for donations. Ideally, you should label this space to ensure that the donations don't get mixed up with other food. And of course, make sure your staff is trained on and aware of the system that you have in place. Use donation records to further reduce your surplus. So this goes back to everything that Heba and our speakers were talking about earlier. Donation records are really another great way to see what items you regularly have left over and to therefore change your practices so that you're reducing the amount you produce in the first place. And then, of course, engaging your team. Like with prevention, food recovery really is a team effort, and it works best when everyone is aware, engaged, and involved. We'll go to the next slide. So this is our website. Again, I'll put the links on the side there. We'll put that in the chat afterwards as well. So if you're on our website and you scroll down to point number 3, which is connecting with a food recovery organization, you can find a link to the list of food recovery organizations listed on our website there. So that will take you to the matching tool. This has a list of organizations that are working in the county and are currently looking for new food recovery partnerships. You can use the filter option there to filter by a number of different categories. Here we're filtering by the type of food. You might select prepared foods. A lot of restaurants have prepared foods in surplus to donate. And so then you'll get a filtered list of organizations that accept prepared foods. You can also then filter by the city that you're in. Another option is to filter by the types of businesses or organizations that these organizations work with. That's another option. And you can select restaurants there to see which organizations specifically work with restaurants. And so then you'll get a shorter list of organizations that might be a good fit for your business. And then we'd recommend reaching out to them to have a conversation to see if it's a good match. And then we'll move on. As I said before, Heba, can you go to the next slide, please? As I said before, it's important to always comply with CAL code, whether food is being sold or donated. If food is not safe or appealing enough for you to want to eat it, it's probably shouldn't be donated. So keep in mind that this might mean changing your system so that you're not putting too much food out or not putting it out for too long to avoid it spoiling, but making sure that those donations are safe and of good quality. When it comes to liability, federal and state regulations protect donors from civil and criminal liability, except in the case of gross negligence or intentional misconduct. So legislation passed last year extends these liability protections to donations made directly to needy individuals instead of just to nonprofit organizations. So that's something else to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind, date labels on food are most often quality and not safety labels. And so this means that many items can be donated either on that date or even after sometimes that use by or best by date. Once you have a food recovery partner established, you should talk to them about their specific policies regarding date labels. And then lastly, record keeping. So SB 1383 requires certain documents to be kept on site for restaurants that have food recovery programs set up. Once your program is set up, you should work to make sure that the following records are on site. So first, a copy of a contract or written agreement with that food recovery organization. The organization's name, address, and contact information that might be in your contract. The types of food that will be donated. So this could be a list of the foods that the food recovery organization accepts, or a list of the foods that you've together agreed will be donated. the frequency or schedule of donation. This could be once or 3 times a week, for example, or as needed. And then lastly, the quantity in pounds of food donated per month. As we mentioned before, if you only have small amounts of surplus, we recommend giving this to employees or selling it at a discount. If you don't have any surplus food that would otherwise be thrown away, you are not required to have a food recovery program or a contract in place. That said, you should be prepared during inspections and in reporting to discuss your food waste prevention measures, to explain how you're preventing throwing away any surplus food. It's important to ensure that you're ready to talk about these in reporting and inspections, regardless of whether you have surplus food or not. Similarly, whether you have surplus or not, you're required to submit a food recovery report annually starting in 2025. Again, that covers this current calendar year, so make sure you're keeping records now so that you're ready to report next year. And then lastly, again, if you haven't received our emails, please reach out and get a valid email address on file so that you can get those reporting reminders. We'll send one mailer, but we'll send multiple email reminders, and so it's helpful to have an email on file. So that's it for our presentation. Thank you all so much for joining us. Please don't go just yet. We've got time for questions. Thanks for those of you who've already submitted questions. Feel free to throw any additional ones in the chat now. We will bring, I think Ru's here, so we will bring him up. I'm not sure if Lumi was able to make it. So if you have any questions for him, please throw that in the Q&A. And you can throw any suggestions that you have for other prevention measures that weren't mentioned in the Q&A or in the chat, and we can share those. As a reminder, once you exit the webinar, you'll get a survey that will pop up. It's a really brief survey, and we would really appreciate your feedback. It'll just take a minute, so if you can provide that, that would be much appreciated. So as we're inviting Ru to join us for Q&A, I'm just going to cover a question that was submitted during registration. So someone asked about costs of food recovery, and someone asked about costs of food recovery. So this does vary from organization to organization. If you go to our matching tool, there are some organizations that charge a fee. Often these organizations provide more flexibility in terms of picking up food, and they may offer more in terms of the impact metrics of your donations. But then many organizations also will provide food recovery without a fee. So that can be, if that's important to you, then that can be something that you ask organizations when you're looking for an organization that would be the right match. And I'll look at these other questions. Heba, if you've got any questions for Ru there, we could focus on that. Ru, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Happy to help.
Hi, Ru. Thank you again. I second that. It was great to talk to you. It was great to record it. There were so many examples there. And one of the questions that came through was, how do you get those ideas? How do you culminate to bring in that's innovative ideas, whether the ground or whether dehydrating or whether repurposing the bacon fat? So can you give us a little of idea of how does this, the process of coming up with these examples or ideas to repurpose your food surplus?
I'm not going to pretend that I am the creator of all these amazing ideas. I'm simply the mouthpiece for this. We are incredibly blessed. Chef Jacqueline she's absolutely amazing. And I think that the key to these ideas is her encouragement and her support of her team. And obviously it starts with bringing the right people in, and then the people who want to experiment, people who want to achieve more, and then essentially encouraging them and removing roadblocks. And I think that's generally our philosophy here, which is like, how can we support people to try new things, advance in their career, or what have you. So that philosophy is certainly applicable in the kitchen, where she encourages people to try new things. You know, one of her assistant chefs, the executive sous chef, he's all about fermenting. And I didn't go into any of that because there's, you know, I don't know if it's even legal. There's all kinds of crazy science stuff going on back there. So, you know, they're really experimenting with all kinds of things. And so I think it starts with kind of creating an environment of exploration and creativity and trying new things. And when some of those things don't work out, that you're just as excited that something was tried. So, so anyway, I think that's where it begins. And then I think that kind of fostering a community of like-minded people sounds like it's almost too close-minded, but a like-minded folks, like essentially creating a network of other chefs or other culinary folks, you know, at any level that are excited about that. And so I think that's what she does. You know, she you know, not just talking to farmers and going to the farmers market. You know, she's talking with other chefs and anybody at any level in the kitchen can suggest ideas or, hey, we're doing this other restaurant. Because let's be honest, most of the folks in the culinary departments have second and third jobs. They're working at other restaurants, they're working at other hotels, other facilities. And so they're seeing ideas. So that kind of cross-pollination is really important. So I would say that kind of creating a place for people to share those ideas, encouraging it and supporting it so that we can help each other out. And sometimes it's just kind of like reaching out to someone and taking that first step and saying, hey, I'm at this place. I know you're here. Can we kind of can we have lunch together? Can we talk about these things? And so that's kind of what I would suggest, because it certainly isn't me just coming up with ideas. And some of these are chefs' ideas, but a lot of it is kind of for staff and kind of bounce ideas off each other.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I guess it feeds into what we were talking a minute ago about the communication of like sometimes allowing that space where someone might have a creative idea, instead of shaming the idea of there is waste, let's reinvent the wheel and just kind of find something else to do. So that's great. Kira, do you have anything else to ask or a comment?
Yeah, I guess just one other question in the last couple of minutes. Ru, I'm curious, how do you go about creating that space, right? Where that is encouraged? Is that something that Ameswell has kind of had as its ethos from the start, sort of at the highest level, or was that cultivated later on? Because I know that can be difficult for some businesses. If the highest level is not that interested, then it's really hard to take the time to do that. So I'm curious if you can share anything there.
I would say that yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that you know, we're only 2.5 years old, and the folks that built this hotel certainly did it as a passion project. They love it. They've been in the industry a long time, and you know, they kind of built it, but like they come with that kind of Silicon Valley venture capitalist mindset, which is, you know, what are you trying? You know, what have you done lately? And so they're always pressuring me, like asking me, like, what have you done? And their philosophy isn't, did it work? But what have you tried? And if it didn't work, okay, what can we tweak? And maybe we just need to, maybe it's the time of the year that you tried. Maybe it was the way we marketed it, whatever. Let's try it a different way. And so the philosophy is more about just try something, keep trying. And if it doesn't work, great, whatever. We're learning in that experience. So I will say that we've been very lucky that support has been from the top down, you know, from the very beginning. One of the reasons why I'm so happy to come here. I love being here because I feel like we're surrounded by people that are like that. But you know, let's not pretend that that's the case for everybody. And I think that if there's a situation where, you know, maybe that kind of support isn't necessarily pervasive in the organization, that you start looking for, you know, your own little kind of support group, your own pod. Like who is your support team in your organization? And maybe it's only one other person, maybe it's 2 other people, but you kind of create your own network, and you know, you have lunch together, or you do a little something, and you kind of start talking about, you know, whether it's offline or whether it's during work, you know, trying to build that. Sometimes it's that momentum, and unfortunately there are people who want to see something. It's, you know, it has to be measurable. Okay, well, you know what, there's laws here. So using these laws that we now have can help some of those leaders get on board. So sometimes you kind of have to hit them over the head a little bit and use the measurable tools to show, look, we tried these efforts and we saved this money. Therefore, look, it's successful. You know, and sometimes that's what it takes to get people on board or to change. And so it depends. I would kind of take it in two ways. One is kind of get your group going and try some things, but then also using what are the requirements. You know, we all have to follow these things. It's going to be a lot easier to get out in front of them. And I think using these things, you can show folks, hey, we saved this, or we saved you money, or we saved you the effort, or we saved you labor hours, you know, whatever, you know, talk the language that they like to hear. And that tends to get people on board. And then maybe you've kind of pushed a little more flexibility. Now you have another inch or a couple inches. Now you have a little more room. Now you can grab a couple more people and you kind of build that. And maybe you have to grow it from the bottom up, as it were.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I love too the using the law to speak and
Sure.
speaking their language. And that's definitely one reason we wanted to focus on prevention today is it does save money generally. It's a way to, ensure that your business practices are, a little bit better and maybe the law can help you get there if you're needing to explain reasons for doing that to folks that are hiring.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I mean, it's a cynical world out there. If the attitude is, marketing purposes, fine, use that leverage. Hey, look, we can show our companies doing great things. You know what I mean? If the company doesn't really care, okay, fine, take the angle that it's a marketing piece that you can make it look like you're doing good. And sometimes you have to kind of use that angle to get some powers that be on board. Fine, but at least now you're actually doing good things.
Yep. And, like the stat that Heba mentioned earlier, one study found that 72% of customers do care about what restaurants are doing with food waste. So, there is that customer base there that's interested in hearing about that. And so I think that marketing opportunity is there and is growing, right?
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Rue. I'm going to answer one question. I know we're over time, but answer one question really quickly. That's easier to answer live than in the chat. Just a quick question that's here about the organization does not accept food from restaurants that are all you can eat, but we donate food to our staff and have no waste. How should we proceed? Again, if you don't have surplus food that you're throwing away, then you don't need to donate that food. But that said, with buffets, organizations, you can't donate food that's been put out for people. So as I think Heba mentioned, not putting out too much food is really important, is really a solution there. In our webinar next week in hotels, we'll talk more about all-you-can-eat buffets and banquets. So you might want to join us for that. But reducing the amount that you're putting out and not putting out more than people are going to need. Obviously, you can only monitor that so much, but not putting too much food out to begin with. If you hold food back, that is food that can be donated, but anything that's been put out that's out of kitchen control and that has been served to customers cannot be donated. So that's really managing what gets put out. So I think that's all we've got time for. Heba, I'll let you, if there's anything else, I'll let you wrap up.
I just wanted to answer also one question. There's a question that came into the chat asking about explain the criteria of compliance for grocery stores. So again, we have a separate webinar for compliance as well as prevention practices at the grocery store. So feel free, if you don't have that link, email us and we can send you the link to sign up for that webinar, which will be taking place next week. And I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that this is recorded. So feel free, we will send you the recording at a later time. So if you want, your staff or you want to share those tips that we have discussed today, feel free to do that when we send you the recording. We would love for you to communicate that and share that. So as much people are aware of those practices and maybe, like we said, pick up a new strategy or two.